You know, relativity is a funny thing. As Albert Einstein once famously said, watch a mediocre, middle-of-the-road cyberpunk movie and a second can seem like an hour. Watch a mediocre, middle-of-the-road cyberpunk movie and compare it to a preachy, brain-dead and utterly meaningless superhero flick, and an hour can seem like a second. Which brings me neatly along to the intellectual conundrum that is Alita Battle Angel, a live-action adaptation of a 1993 anime of a 1990 manga series produced by none other than James Cameron himself. But as history has shown us, recycling a popular comic IP through multiple different media doesn't always lead to good results. Neither does having James Cameron's name attached to your project. See, Alita came out around the same time as nobody's favourite hero, Captain Marvel, and on the face of it, the two films were well set up to compete against each other. Both of them featured a female protagonist with no memory of her former life. Both of them had her team up with a male support character to gradually uncover the truth of their origins, ultimately resulting in them finding the inner strength to prevail against a powerful enemy. So it's no surprise that Alita became kind of a flagship for the anti-Marvel movement, a movie that was elevated way above its humble origins by lucky timing and circumstance, and I suspect this may have clouded people's judgment about its faults and merits. But now the drinker's here to cut through that fog, because there's only one thing that clouds my judgment, and it isn't movies. So Alita kicks off 300 years after an interplanetary war between Earth and Mars, known as the Fall. There's only one major city left on Earth, and it's composed of two levels. Iron City on the surface, where the lower classes toil away to provide resources for Zolom, a massive floating paradise hovering overhead, where all the rich people live. This sounds awfully familiar. How exactly does an entire city weighing millions of tons float in mid-air? Don't know. This is also a world where cyborgs aren't just possible, they're practically the norm. Humans routinely graft cybernetic enhancements onto themselves, either to replace missing limbs or to get whole new bodies. I'm not entirely sure why you'd want to go around looking like this. I mean, how does a guy like this function on a day-to-day basis? Could you imagine running into him at your local supermarket? Anyway, every so often, Zolom will shit out all its garbage into a big scrapyard beneath. And it's here that Dr. Dyson Edo discovers a damaged cyborg head with an intact human brain inside it. What could that be doing here? So he brings it back to his workshop and attaches it to a new body that was originally designed for his disabled daughter who died in a cheesy flashback. Wait a minute, a scientist named Dyson who works with cyborgs?
Miles Bennett Dyson.
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Anyway, then he leaves her unattended and goes off to have a nap, which seems like kind of an odd thing to do when you've just created a very powerful and dangerous cyborg powered by a human brain of unknown origins or intent. You don't know the first thing about this machine. It could have gone on a murderous rampage before it was destroyed, and now you're just letting it roam free in your house? So the head wakes up and Dyson names her Alita because she doesn't remember her original name. Then they have breakfast and I guess she's just free to go. What was the point in any of this? I mean, I could understand if Dyson was lonely or he needed help in his workshop, so it would totally make sense to go to all this effort to construct a new cyborg. But here it's like he just brought Alita back to life because he could.
We made you because we could.
Fuck off, Prometheus! Now brace yourselves, because this is where I need to outline about 500 or so characters in this film and how they all fit together. So Alita goes for a walk and runs into Hugo, an assistant to Dyson who works as a scrap dealer and dreams of moving up to Zolom one day because he doesn't like being poor, I guess. But he also runs a sideline attacking cyborgs and stripping them for parts, which he donates to Discount Blade, a dodgy underworld kingpin and head of the Factory, the closest thing to a functioning government in Iron City. Discount Blade also runs a violent deathmatch tournament called Motorball, where the eventual winner is promised a ticket up to Zolom, just like Whitman, Price and Haddad, last season's winners.
No. Last season's losers.
She also meets Jennifer Connelly, Dyson's ex-wife, and another cyborg engineer who kind of sleepwalks her way in and out of random scenes. Jennifer Connelly also wants to go up to Zolom, even though she's totally rich and pampered by Discount Blade in Iron City, because she used to live there with Dyson, but they had to move down to the surface because they were too nice or something. But it turns out that Dyson also runs a sideline as a hunter-warrior, which are bounty hunters tasked with taking out criminal cyborgs for money, and the best hunter-warrior is Discount Jude Law, who's kind of an arrogant dickhead that ultimately ends up turning against Alita. And all of this is being controlled and masterminded by Nova, a powerful man living up in Zolom, who can remotely control people to interact with events in Iron City, and gradually Alita starts to have flashbacks that she has a past connection to him. Now, if this sounds like an awful lot of expedition to try and cram into a 2-hour movie, you'd be right. The original manga created a rich and complex backstory for its huge cast of characters, because that's the kind of thing you can do when you've got hundreds of pages to play with. But a movie's a very different prospect, and it feels like the screenplay is being crushed under the weight of so many ideas and characters. Anyway, the streamlined version is that Alita discovers Dyson's a hunter warrior when she follows him out one night. I love his weapon of choice here, a rocket-powered battle axe, wielded by a man who looks like he weighs 140 pounds soaking wet. Anyway, Dyson gets into trouble when he's ambushed by some evil cyborgs, led by a human tank named Growishka. This forces Alita to fight them, and she starts to remember that she was trained to be a soldier in her former life. So she damages Growishka and forces him to retreat. Alita wants to learn more about her past, but Dyson's like, nah, it'll be fine. So she goes with Hugo, and he shows her a crashed spaceship from before the fall, and apparently nobody's ever bothered to strip it for parts because it's too advanced. What the fuck? Wouldn't that be exactly why you'd want to strip it down and study it? Have you ever heard of reverse engineering? Are you mental? Nah, whatever. So Alita swims inside and discovers a new cyborg body that's been conveniently left behind for her. Wow, that was lucky. Now, I know this complaint isn't unique to Alita, but it always pisses me off when technology somehow magically still works, despite being exposed to the elements for hundreds of years. Like, that ship's been submerged in a lake for 300 years, and you're telling me it hasn't ever leaked in all that time, and all the computers inside are still fully functional? How? Who made this thing? And what powers it? God? Anyway, so Alita decides she's bored of being stuck in the body of a small child, so she asks Dyson to install her in the new body so she can beat Growishka next time. But he's like, nah, it'll be fine. But she's like, nah, it won't be fine. And she becomes a hunter warrior so she can recruit the other bounty hunters to help stop Growishka. That's when discount Jude Law starts being an asshole, so Alita beats him up. But then Growishka shows up anyway, only this time he's had an upgrade from sleepwalking Jennifer Connelly and discount Blade, and he uses it to chop Alita into little bits. Oh no, if only there was a replacement body she could be transplanted into.
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
You saw where I was going with that, didn't you? So now that Alita's got a shiny new body, she forgets all about Growishka and decides to enter the Motorball tournament to win enough money to send Hugo up to Zolom. Because, you know, why stick with a consistent and compelling rivalry when you can segue into some other random bullshit instead? And it's weird, because the movie tries to create tension by having Dyson say he can't repair Alita's new body because it's too advanced or something. So if she gets sliced and diced again, it's for real this time. But then later, the body gets damaged in a fight and it totally repairs itself, so I'm not sure what the point of any of that even was. Anyway, then discount Jude Law shows up and kills Hugo while Alita's in the Motorball game, but it's okay because they chop his head off and connect it to Alita's life support systems.
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
To keep it alive until they can graft it onto a new body. Oh yeah, and Alita slices discount Jude Law's face off with his own sword. That's poetic justice at its finest, you see. After a lifetime of having a face, now he doesn't. Then she tracks down Discount Blade, kills Growishka with her super powerful new body, and then stabs Discount Blade in the fucking chest. Oh yeah, and Hugo tries to walk up one of the big steel pipes to Zolom, but then he falls off and dies. And the movie ends with Alita looking up at Ed Norton in Zolom like she's saying, "You're getting it in the sequel, ya ball bag." And he's like, "Nah, it'll be fine, there probably won't be one." So that's it, that's the plot for Alita Battle Angel. And this is where I have to stop dicking around and make some kind of judgment on this movie. Well, there are certainly positive aspects of this film, so let's look at them. Probably the biggest selling point is Alita herself. A decent bit of character building, combined with an excellent performance by Rosa Salazar, delivers a protagonist who's likeable, funny, resilient and capable, but also flawed, vulnerable, naive and impulsive. She's like a child discovering the world for the first time. She's curious about her surroundings and the people in it, and she's willing to take big risks for characters she barely knows. It's refreshing and endearing, and best of all, there's none of the smug superiority you get with other characters. And it's amazing how little things go a long way towards making you like her. Like when Alita tries her hand at Motorball for the first time, and she totally gets her ass kicked because she doesn't know what she's doing. But she sticks with it, knuckles down and works hard, and eventually she gets good. Wow, a female character who isn't instantly perfect and has to work at things to earn respect and experience. This is revolutionary stuff in 2019. Visually, the movie is solid. Obviously, there's a heavy reliance on CGI, but for the most part, it's brilliantly done, even if Alita herself sometimes tumbles into the uncanny valley. Also, there's a rich and complex backstory that the movie's wise enough to leave only partially explored. It really feels like the events of this film are part of a much larger narrative, and clearly it's been set up with a sequel in mind. Right, that's the praise taken care of, now let the complaints begin. Alita has a strong cast of experienced supporting actors. Unfortunately, because the screenplay tries to juggle so many characters at once, they're mostly wasted in roles that don't give them enough room to breathe. And as a result, the film often has to take the simple, direct, and predictable option to resolve their stories. I'm always going to have a soft spot for Jackie Earle Haley after his performance in Watchmen, but unfortunately he's buried under so much latex and makeup here that his character Grewishka could be played by pretty much anyone. He's big and dumb, and his one and only attack is to keep doing the same extendable claw thing over and over. Sometimes it works, but then it doesn't, and you can see that the guy has absolutely nothing in reserve. Alita doesn't beat him with cunning or by exploiting some hidden weakness, she just kind of becomes better than him, and it feels simplistic. Ed Skrein plays discount Jude Law, and while he hams it up to the best of his ability, the character's never really allowed to present a threat. The first time Alita confronts him, she totally kicks his ass, which undermines him as a viable antagonist. Now, you might think that an arrogant dickhead like him might eventually have a change of heart and turn into an unlikely saviour. That would be a nice redemption arc. Nope, he's bad from start to finish, then he gets his comeuppance, and it feels simplistic. Christoph Waltz is another actor known for playing complex and quirky characters, but he seems kind of lost in the altruistic role of Dyson. I kept waiting to see a darker side of him, a man tormented by loss and grief and anger, who's perhaps not as good as he first seems, but it never happens, and it feels like a wasted opportunity for such a talented actor. Speaking of wasted opportunities, Jennifer Connelly seems to have no purpose in this movie whatsoever. She's just kind of there, wandering around trying to look like she knows what's going on. It's even more unsatisfying that she basically gets killed off screen. Her one and only skill is that she's good at engineering, but it feels like that role could have easily been filled by someone else. Someone like Discount Blade. Marshala Ali is one of those guys that just oozes cool and charisma, and I wanted to see more of him. I kept waiting for him to do something awesome, but it never happens. He's just there to act as a mouthpiece for the real bad guy, and when Alita finally confronts him, the guy crumples like a gender studies professor exposed to facts and reality. Then there's Hugo, the love interest for Alita. Again, it feels like they glossed over a character that had the potential to be interesting and complex. Hugo's one and only goal is to get to Zolom by any means necessary, but we never really found out why, so we're left to assume he just wants to live in luxury with the other rich people. There's no higher purpose, no hidden objective or personal revelation to put that objective in a different context. He just wants the same thing as everyone else, for the same reasons, and it feels, well, simplistic. And I guess that's the thing that stood out for me about this movie. It feels like it was made for kids, people who don't understand the nuances of complex storytelling and morally grey characters. What you see is pretty much what you get, and what you get is a basic, straight-up story that takes you from A to B with no real detours, and while it never does anything terribly wrong, it doesn't exactly blow the gates of originality off their hinges either. I said before that the problem with this script is that it tries to take on too much, covering too many characters, too many events, and too much world building to the detriment of its central narrative. But another issue is the nature of the things it does decide to show us, like when Grewishka demands upgraded weapons so he can defeat Alita. It would have been easy to just have him show up with them later, because really, who cares about the intricate details of how a basic enforcer character becomes more powerful? But nah, the script actually shows the full full process of stealing weapons from another character, and it really feels like 5 minutes of screen time that could have been devoted to something more meaningful, like fleshing out the true nature of Zolom and its people. Everyone seems to want to go there, but the movie never lets us see it so we can understand why. Why is it so special? What's so incredible about it? It's not much good setting up a goal for people to strive towards if we don't understand what that goal is or why they want it. I mean, life on the ground looks tough, but it's not exactly an unbearable hellhole either. I guess this is a problem of set design rather than writing, but Iron City is depicted as a colourful, brightly lit and vibrantly multicultural place. The population looks well fed and prosperous. There's entertainment arenas, shops and restaurants, and it made me think, wow, there's towns in Scotland that look worse than this place. And I know because I live in one. Movies like Elysium did a much better job of depicting Earth as a bleak, hopeless landscape of slums and violence and desperation, and stuff like this reinforces my belief that Alita was targeted at a much younger audience. The movie also glosses over a few too many things that are clearly meant to be tackled in a sequel, like Jai Courtney showing up for 3 seconds as a Motorball champion, or Ed Norton smirking his way through like 2 scenes. I'm all for setting up the plots of future movies, but not when it comes at the expense of your first one. Ultimately then, Alita is kind of a diamond in the rough for me. Yeah, it's certainly got issues. The dialogue comes across as goofy and cliched, the antagonists are kind of disorganised and not all that memorable, and the bloated script tries to juggle too many elements rather than giving us a more focused, streamlined narrative. But I think there's a good story lurking beneath all the bullshit. It's a movie that delivers a likeable, interesting and compelling protagonist, set against the backdrop of an intriguing post-apocalyptic world, and an ending that's well positioned for what I hope would be a more refined and mature sequel. And hey, in case you're wondering, it's still miles better than Captain Marvel. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.